And today we're talking about everything to do with shading, and specifically with a mag. We're shading with a mag today. Right off the bat, we're gonna start by going over it real quick. You have a flat mag, which essentially means that they are flat across the top. Then you have a curved mag, which they just have a slight curve. They're double stacked and they're offset like this. So we're gonna be using these to briefly explain the motion and how everything works. And then we'll go to fake skin, and then finally we'll take it to some real skin for some brief demonstration. We're gonna start with whip shading. And before I get into anything serious, just understand that these are merely names for things. You could have a style of doing something that's like a mix between a few different techniques, and it might not be called anything. You can call it whatever you want, as long as you know the different motions that you can make, some of the common motions you can make, some of the common techniques. It's okay if you don't know what they're called. It's okay if all the other stuff. It's all about making it happen on the skin. So we're gonna start off with a form of whip shading. Here's your mag, moving up and down, yada yada yada. You're starting here and you're whipping out. And you're going back in, whipping out. Back in, whipping out. Back in, whipping out. Whipping out. Now, as you can see, if you're getting a snag, the skin is snagging when you're going through this process, it could be because, just like this pillow, there's no tension on it. I'm not stretching it, nothing. I'm just trying to whip it, and you might get a snag, and that happens often, according to the comments. So, what you can do is, again, you want to stretch the skin out a little bit. And a 3-point stretch sometimes is the best stretch, sometimes it's not. It depends on how much tension you want on the skin or is needed for what you're doing. In this case, we'll stretch the skin out a little bit and we'll whip shade. Now keep in mind, your mag's not this big. You'll have a lot more room to move around, but in this demonstration, again, we're stretching the skin and we're whipping it. And that's in, and as you come out, you're in, and as you come out, it's getting lighter. Needles are going in the skin. We're not like just really softly on top. The needles are going into the skin a decent amount, and as you're coming out, you're raising your hand up in like an arcing motion. And you're just, what that's gonna do is give you a darker look here, and then slowly lighten it up as the needles come out and your hand is moving. You can do this fast, you can do this slow. Again, it all depends on your hand speed, the voltage speed. If your voltage is lower, you don't have to move your hand quite as fast, and you might even get a stippled look, which might be desirable. Or you move your hand a little bit quicker and the appearance will change. But nonetheless, that is essentially whip shading, and that's why they call it whip shading. You're just whipping it, whip it, whip it, right? And again, that stretch is important to keep you from snagging. Now, again, you have your flat mag. You can do the same thing. I prefer to use a curved mag because I don't get sharp edges on the sides from doing these different techniques, but that is personal preference. Again, personal preference. We have that style of shading. Then we have like this pepper style shading, this really light, almost like we're painting, and that's how you get those really smooth shades, those soft shades, maybe in a portrait, anything. I use this technique all the time. A mixture of the technique I just showed you and then some of this, and that is really this in a nutshell. That is all we're doing. We're coming out here into the skin and out, and the darker you want that area, maybe the slower you'll move, maybe the further you'll push pressure down. Okay, now you're gonna get snags here too if you're not careful. If you're not stretching the skin, then you essentially have to be a bit lighter with your hand because you don't want to snag it. So this would be times when you run it really soft and you are almost just doing a number like this over and over, moving. If he starts to snag or you want it a little darker, again, you're gonna have to stretch. And the stretch in correlation with your hand and the mag and everything, it's all playing this little dance. And it will get more comfortable over time. You have to make a few mistakes to figure it out sometimes. So again, we're stretching it out. And here, sometimes you can plant your pinky as a base so you can work it, or sometimes you could just literally float your arm up there. Depends on your comfort, depends on how you feel, depends on a lot of things, but this is essentially how that would work. You're out here, you're in, and again, you can vary that depth, you can slow that hand speed down, but a lot of times That's all that is. Now another thing you can do with a mag is, a lot of times we look at it as shading, meaning you're in, you're out, you're kind of painting, you're doing this dance, right? But you can also create effects with it. Remember, it is a wide set of needles. You could literally come in there quite slowly, and keeping that mag in the skin and pull it out, it almost acts as like a calligraphy piece at that point. You want to be careful and you want to take your time and understand what it is you're doing, because that's a lot of needles to be in the skin for a period of time if you're not careful. Also, another thing too is you have these curves on your mag. If you're using a curved mag, that is, you have these curves here. Now those curves can be used as well. If you're coming around an area and you don't want to use the full thickness of your mag, because let's say it's this big, but really you just want a smaller area and you want to be able to softly do it, you can again use the side of that curved mag and do the same thing, whether you're whipping it or you're just kind of painting it a little bit or peppering it like that. You could do that. All these different options, these different things you can do. You can line with this thing. That's just a few of the very simple things you can do with a mag, and those are most of what I use. Call them whatever you want, doesn't matter. But those motions, those ideas are what translates to the skin for me. So let's get to fake skin and let's see it in action. So here we are. I got a little piece of fake skin here. This is just some of the basic stuff we always use. In an upcoming video, we're gonna test a couple different fake skins, thanks to a subscriber who sent some in. Really cool, thank you. We're also gonna be using the CNC Q2. I have that loaded up with the 23 curved bug pin mag. So again, that's gonna be our curved mag. Of course, this is bug pins, so they're a little bit smaller than your standard needles, but the concept's all the same. I'm gonna start this off by running my needles this far out. Also, we'll be using dynamic black for this, not triple black, none of that, just basic dynamic black. Now, I'm not gonna go over like how to tattoo fake skin, different stuff. We might touch on a few of those things, but if you're interested in that, I'll link a video somewhere up here or over here or wherever it is on tattooing fake skin. So I use Inkies. That's the ointment I'm using on the back of my glove. You can use A&D, Vaseline, whatever the case may be, but again, that's just the product I'm using here. Now again, just like we talked about, you're gonna go in and out. And the slower you go when you want it a little darker. If you want it out further, push it further. A lot of it all comes down to hand speed motion. That's your hand to speed of your machine to the motion. Okay, so again, we're just messing around, but let's see what that gave us. I use a little bit of that ointment. I rub it onto the fake skin in the area I want to clean off, and then I wipe it clean. And there you have what we would consider whip shading. Now you can smooth this out more by working it and what have you. As you can see, we have a darker bit down here, and as we brought the machine in and up, it lightens up, but those needles are still coming out and they're still punching as you're bringing your hand up. So we'll do that just one more time. Here, I'm just gonna stay in one spot. So here we go again. So again, this is essentially whip shading. There are many different ways to manipulate it, but essentially you're in the skin and you're coming out. You're in the skin and you're coming out. You're in the skin and you're coming out. You can also do this backwards. This is if you want a lighter shading, a lighter, softer shade. What I will do is I will run my machine backwards and pull down like this, if this were the area I wanted to shade. Start here, pull down. It has less effect. It doesn't quite punch the skin as much. It's a bit softer, and you might get yourself a softer gradation. So we'll go over that real quick. So this is how that would look. And there you have it. It's a bit softer. And again, you could push harder, you could push softer. A lot of it comes down to your hand pressure, hand speed. We talk about that a lot. So that's essentially whip shading. Again, many different versions. Play with it. You'll find different effects you can do with the same concept. Next, we'll kind of like do a pepper shading style. It can be interpreted in many ways, but essentially we're just being kind of soft on the skin. Not so soft to where no ink is being penetrated, but it allows us to build layers up. Now, like I said, you can brace yourself with your pinky, you can brace yourself with your hand, maybe you brace yourself right here with your wrist, and you're doing this number. However the case may be, so you're gonna start here. In, up, in, up, in, up, in, up. Now again, on real skin versus fake skin, we know that they don't act the same, but it's still a great way to practice, still a great way to try to get comfortable with those different motions. And what can you see here? You see that there's no start and stop point. There's no edge that I'm working off of. I'm not starting in here and pushing out. You're coming in from nowhere, diving in and coming out really quick, like that. And when you have that curved mag, even if your hand's at an angle like this, you're still not going to be diving too deep. So again, that's the process, just like that. And let's say that's what you were going for, but you wanted it a little darker. Now, again, this is somewhat softly put into the skin over time. Enough of these layers, you can start irritating the skin pretty hardcore. But here, it's not too bad. So maybe we want a little darker. So we're gonna layer it up a little bit more. And that could mean just moving slower where you want it. So you're coming in. You know, I want it darker right there, and then I want to lighten it up as I come out. And as you can see, you don't know 100% what's going on underneath the ink and what's staying until you wipe it off. But over time, you'll start to get a little more comfortable with what is going on. You'll trust yourself, you'll trust what you have learned, and that it's going to happen. Now, again, fake skin, who knows? But again, you can see we layered it up and we got it a little darker. Now in real life, you might want to be a little more cautious of how you're doing this. Here, I don't really care if one spot's darker than the other. It's just for demonstrational purposes. But nonetheless, that is a really important tool to practice and know how to use, because that is how you're going to fill those larger areas, those really soft areas. I use this technique all the time, and the whip shading all the time. They're used in unison a lot of times. So the next thing I want to go over is something we briefly talked about before with the pillow and whatnot, and that is where we kind of keep that in there and we move it, right? We're not quite lining, we're just creating an effect maybe, motion, filling an area. I'll make the movement, and that way you understand what I'm saying. Okay, now, mind you, you have to put the needles into the skin and move them. Fake skin's a bit tougher, it's a little harder, you gotta move a little slower, gotta push a little harder at times. But we wipe that off, and there you go. You've created almost like something you would create with a calligraphy pen. You're coming across, and then you come down, and you move, and it keeps that motion because, you know, it's a mag. It's essentially like, you know, sort of like a paintbrush. So you can get effects like that, just like that. And there will be times you want to use that, times you don't. It's just another tool for your toolbox. You put it back there, you play with it. Maybe a time will come where you could try this out, and you'll do so, and you'll see the different things you can do simply like that. Next, I want to talk about lining with a mag. I'll probably do a video more in depth about this because I think it's a really good thing to know how to do. Now, you might not necessarily want to use a mag to line your whole tattoo. That's just probably not a good idea. But there are times when, it works, where you might need to, you might want to, whatever. I'll let the situation rest with you. But nonetheless, I'm going to show you how we do it. Again, you have these moving already in a straight line. You want to be careful because there's 27 needles here, or however many needles you're running with. So when you're moving that across the skin, that's a whole lot of needles hitting the same area at one time. But we'll just do that for now. Let me wipe that away, and you can see you have a line. Now, it's not the easiest thing to keep this line perfectly straight for a long period of time. That's fine, but I just want to show you that you can line with a mag if you're careful and the time is right. So let's take this to some real skin, mess around, and see what happens. Okay, so here we go. We got the leg here. We're gonna do some stuff in the flower. I'm not really necessarily gonna shade it like I would a flower because it's gonna be hard to record that. But nonetheless, I'll just treat the flower like open area and we'll tattoo it as such. Same setup. I got dynamic black loaded up in my 23 curved mag, and we're gonna do a little shading. We're gonna start off with a whip shade style. I'll be here and I'll just kind of do this number to kind of show you what's going on. So again, I'm not shading this like I would a flower, just shading it to show you the same thing we did on fake skin. So if this were an edge here, we'll wipe it off, we'll clean it off, and as you can see we have whip shading. Now again, I wasn't stretching much at all. We'll stretch the skin a little bit more and do it again right over here. That's pretty much the whole motion right there. And again, I'm just using straight black, but as you can see, that's the shade. If you want it darker down here, you just come in there and kind of whip yourself a little bit more shorter strokes to get a bit more saturation. And there you go. You have a now again, just black, so it's not a really, really awesome gradation, but you do have a gradation here. Now over here, I'm going to do the same concept, just that pendulum style motion, almost like we're painting the skin. That's all it is. We're definitely going in the skin, coming out, in the skin, coming out, in the skin, coming out. And the quicker you move your hand, and that's why I tell you this is for soft shading, okay? If you wanted a darker than this, then, well, you would just slow your hand down a little bit. I'll show you that. We're gonna darken this up. I'm gonna slow my hand down. And there you go, we've darkened it up. Now there is no starting point, ending point. There's nothing like this where we're whipping it from a point out. It's gentle on one side, into the skin, out, gentle on the other side. And you can do this with different shades. Obviously in the middle of this petal, I don't think I'd put a black bit right there. But again, I don't care about any of this stuff, guys. This is just practice, this is just fun. This is just a story I have for myself. So the next thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna show you how we can dive the needles in, move them, and get that effect. So again, we'll just use this petal here. Now what you're gonna do is come in, and there you have it, just like we had it on the fake skin. Okay, and the last thing we're gonna do is we will go over some lining with a mag. Again, it's the same concept before, pretty simplistic. There you go. There's a line. It's essentially that easy. You just want to go slow, careful not to penetrate too much. Again, these needles are right next to each other. This needle's already hit that spot. By the time you come across, all these needles are hitting the same exact spot multiple times. So you want to make sure that you're moving at a proper speed, not too deep, nice and gentle. So I hope this short video really helps you out. I know we didn't go into great detail, but I felt it's enough to get you started. If you already started, it's enough to maybe trigger some other ideas, some other thoughts. Again, these are needles, but think of them like a paintbrush. And once you get comfortable in the skin, you'll start to see all these different things that you can do that people probably have a fancy name for, but you just figured it out for yourself. Nonetheless, guys, if you enjoyed the video, give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and ring the bell to get notifications when we post, go live, or anything like that. And until next time, guys, peace.